We must join with Sauron. It would be wise, my friend.
How could one of the wisest beings in Middle-earth miss the truth right in front of him? Gandalf had the insight, the experience, and every warning he needed, yet he never saw the betrayal growing within his closest ally. Saruman stood at the center of power, speaking of order and unity, while quietly turning toward darkness. Having watched The Lord of the Rings, you've probably asked the same question. How did Gandalf never see it coming? The halo of the White Wizard. When Gandalf speaks of Saruman, he doesn't speak with suspicion. He speaks with certainty. Saruman is not simply another wizard. He is Saruman the White, head of the Istari, chief of the White Council, the one believed to understand the enemy better than any other. In Gandalf's mind, Saruman is already vetted, already proven, a fixed point in a world slowly darkening. And that assumption changes everything, because when someone occupies the highest seat of authority, doubt doesn't disappear. It never forms. Saruman's words arrive pre-approved. His silences feel intentional, not evasive. His delays are read as caution, not calculation. Saruman doesn't deceive Gandalf by lying outright. He deceives him by fulfilling expectations. He speaks calmly when others grow urgent. He frames power as responsibility. He presents himself as the stabilizing force in a fractured council. Even his robe matters. And here lies the deepest irony. To Gandalf, the white robes represented the highest standard of moral stewardship, a holy light meant to guide Middle-earth. But Saruman had already secretly abandoned that meaning. In the books, Saruman explicitly mocks Gandalf for putting faith in the color, telling him white cloth may be dyed, the white page can be overwritten, and the white light can be broken. He reveals he has abandoned Saruman the White to become Saruman of many colors, his robes shifting with every hue. Gandalf missed the betrayal because he was looking at the uniform, while Saruman was looking at the prism. Gandalf trusted the symbol of the office so much that he couldn't see the man inside had already changed his allegiance. We see this blindness in how Gandalf handles Saruman's scorn. In the films and books, Saruman openly mocks Gandalf's love of the halfling's leaf. He calls it foolish. He sneers at Gandalf's interest in lesser creatures. Gandalf dismisses this as a personality quirk, just a haughty superior being difficult. He misses the deeper signal: contempt. Saruman's disdain for the simple things of the world wasn't just rudeness. It was the first symptom of a mind that had replaced care with control. But because Gandalf expected arrogance from Saruman, he didn't count it as a warning sign. This can't be happening here. Even when doubt begins to flicker, the mind resists what it cannot afford to accept. For Gandalf, the idea that Saruman had fallen wasn't just troubling. It was unthinkable. Saruman was not a distant ruler or a shadowed enemy. He was the center of the White Council, the anchor meant to hold the wise together. If corruption existed there, then nowhere was safe. And so the mind looks for safer explanations. Delays become prudence, secrecy becomes strategy, and silence becomes wisdom. This is not ignorance, it's normalcy bias, the instinct to assume that the structures we rely on today will still function tomorrow, even as evidence begins to strain that belief. Tolkien never has Saruman suddenly reveal himself. He lets suspicion erode slowly, always just subtle enough to ignore. The long years of watchful peace only deepen this blindness. Evil, when it returns gradually, rarely announces itself. Gandalf senses that something is wrong, but not where it's wrong. Because imagining Saruman's betrayal would mean imagining that the last guardians of Middle-earth had already failed, that the war was not approaching, but already lost in its command. And so, Gandalf does what many wise, well-intentioned leaders do. He postpones the conclusion, not because the evidence isn't there, but because accepting it would shatter the world as he understands it. The mission requires unity. By the time Gandalf begins to sense that Saruman is withholding more than he shares, Middle-earth is already fragile. The free peoples are divided, elves are fading, men are mistrustful, dwarves are withdrawn. The White Council itself is slow, cautious, and fractured by differing priorities. In that climate, unity is not a luxury, it is survival. And Saruman knows this. He never presents himself as an obstacle. He presents himself as the only solution, the one voice capable of coordination, the one mind willing to make hard decisions for the greater good. To challenge him would not simply create disagreement. It would risk splintering the last remaining leadership resisting Sauron. For Gandalf, this creates a quiet moral trap. Calling Saruman into question would mean introducing conflict at the highest level, precisely when the world can least afford it. Worse, it would make Gandalf appear divisive, an instigator undermining unity in a time of crisis. Saruman exploits this perfectly. He frames hesitation as responsibility, dominance as order, and dissent as recklessness. He does not silence opposition by force, but by making opposition feel irresponsible. Gandalf by nature is a unifier. He moves among peoples, builds bridges, and keeps hope alive by drawing others together. His instincts push him toward patience, not confrontation, toward dialogue, not fracture. So, when warning signs emerge, Gandalf does not accuse, he waits, hoping that restraint is wisdom. But restraint, when aimed at the wrong man, becomes permission. And unity, when enforced at all costs, becomes the perfect cover for betrayal. Asymmetry of knowledge, Saruman's advantage. Saruman is not merely hiding his intentions. He is controlling the entire flow of information. From Orthanc, he isolates himself physically and intellectually, turning Isengard into a fortress of knowledge. Messages pass through him, research gathers around him, and most importantly, conclusions emerge already shaped by his influence. Gandalf and the Council are never reacting to reality. They are reacting to Saruman's version of it. This imbalance matters, because deception works best when one side doesn't realize a game is being played at all. Saruman has time and secrecy. He has the authority to decide what is discussed and what is dismissed. When he speaks as someone who has already done the work, already examined the danger, already reached conclusions others are still circling. And then there is the Palantir. Through it, Saruman gains access to intelligence no one else possesses, knowledge of movements, threats, and power beyond the reach of the Council. Even when that knowledge is distorted by Sauron, it gives Saruman confidence, leverage, and the ability to speak with unsettling certainty. Gandalf, meanwhile, operates in fragments. He travels, listens, senses, and pieces together truth slowly. He has intuition, but intuition struggles against a man who claims data. Saruman doesn't need to disprove Gandalf. He simply needs to outpace him. By the time Gandalf begins to suspect the depth of Saruman's corruption, Saruman is already several moves ahead, prepared not for debate, but for domination. And when knowledge is this unevenly distributed, truth doesn't fail because it is wrong. It fails because it arrives too late. Identity threat, when the wise can fall. To accept that Saruman had fallen would require Gandalf to confront a far more unsettling truth. The wise themselves were not immune. Gandalf's identity is bound to a quiet conviction that the Istari, though limited, were sent precisely because they could resist domination. They were meant to guide, not rule, to counsel, not command. If Saruman had truly succumbed to power, then that belief collapses, and with it, the sense of safety it provides. This isn't pride in the shallow sense. It's existential. If the highest among the order could be corrupted, then wisdom itself offers no protection. Authority becomes suspect. Guidance becomes dangerous. The very framework Gandalf relies on to navigate Middle-earth begins to fracture, so the mind resists, not by denying facts outright, but by postponing their meaning. Saruman isn't fallen. He's misguided. He's not corrupt. He's overzealous. These softer interpretations protect Gandalf from a more devastating conclusion, that the safeguards he trusts have already failed. Gandalf has spent centuries discerning hearts, sensing danger, nudging events toward hope. To admit Saruman's betrayal would be to admit a failure of judgment, not just about a colleague, but about the nature of evil itself. That kind of realization is not absorbed instantly. It threatens identity, purpose, and trust in one's own perception. And so, Saruman's corruption remains, for a time, psychologically impossible, not because Gandalf is blind, but because seeing clearly would shatter the ground he stands on. The trap at Isengard. When Gandalf finally rides to Isengard, he does not arrive as an investigator. He arrives as a colleague. He expects counsel, debate, perhaps disagreement, but still within the shared framework of resistance against Sauron. That expectation is what makes the trap work. Saruman does not reveal himself with rage or madness. He speaks calmly, reasonably. He frames his betrayal as necessity. Power, he explains, is inevitable. The wise thing is not to oppose it, but to manage it, to join it before it crushes all resistance. Psychologically, this triggers cognitive dissonance. It is the violent collision of two opposing beliefs. Saruman is my mentor, and Saruman is a traitor. The sudden collapse of his world paralyzes Gandalf. Saruman tries to rewrite the narrative, offering partnership and order. But when Gandalf refuses, the dissonance resolves into a terrifying clarity. The doors close, the tower becomes a cage, and the denial finally breaks. There is no gradual realization anymore. No reinterpretation, no benefit of the doubt. Saruman's authority, patience, and unity are revealed as tools of domination, not stewardship. Psychologically, this is the snap, the instant when doubt becomes clarity, not because new evidence appears, but because the old evidence finally aligns into a single, unavoidable truth. When Gandalf leaves Isengard, he is no longer a wizard seeking answers, but a messenger of urgency, aware now that the war has already begun. To see how manipulation quietly reshapes events without ever drawing a sword, watch next. Every time Sauron's manipulations led the Fellowship astray,